Hello, welcome to Taryn Study. I'm Taryn Tyler, and this is where I study. Happy Halloween month. I know exactly what you're thinking. It is cold and dreary and dark, and you don't have a single thing to read. But I am here to help you. I have a book review for you today, Darkling by K.M.Rice. This is the story of a girl who lives in a village where the sun has gone completely out. In order to save her village, she offers to sacrifice herself to the bringer of the darkness in the hopes that the sun will shine again, the crops will grow, and her family will survive. Her bond with her family is not shown for very long, but you definitely believe that it is enough for her to endure all of the dangers that she goes through in order to save her family. The plot is exciting, the tone is dark, and the book deals with themes like love versus obsession, judging by appearances, and fearing change. I read this book in a matter of 48 hours. I'm usually actually quite a slow reader. I like to slowly digest everything that I'm reading, but K.M.Rice really keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time. Every time you think you know what's about to happen, something completely different goes down. And the whole time you're just like, but wait, but what? Oh no, I don't know. I must turn the page. And she also writes in present tense, which is really hard to do well, but she does it very, very, very well, which may have to do with her background in screenplay writing. The action is very, very visual, very, very present, very, very in the moment, and it's really, really done very beautifully. But if I tell you too much else, it will completely spoil everything. So, a bit of a homework for you. Pause the video, go read the book, and come back. What are you still doing here? I told you to go read the book. Seriously, do not proceed unless you've read it. So, now that you've read the book, because you did, right? You did? I'm watching you. You better have read this book. Do not proceed unless you have read this book. Have I had enough warnings yet? Okay. So while I loved mostly everything about this book, there are two things that did bother me a little bit. The first is, where did Tristan and Victoria get all the things that they furnished their mansion with? If Willow's village is completely backwards and unmodern, and even more importantly, Tristan has not had contact with anyone from Willow's village except for Draven's dad, he couldn't have gotten anything from the village. But if all the other villages and towns and cities are so far away from the village that no one from the village has ever been there, did they really decide while they were fugitives to pick up canvas and paints so Victoria can paint? Did they pick up a whole kitchen full of dishes and candlestick? In addition to knowing how to build a house, does a rich young man who seemed to have been very, very sheltered also know how to build and upholster furniture? Where did they get the fabric to upholster the furniture? Where did they get the fabric for Victoria's fancy dresses? Could they really have carried all that stuff believably while they were fugitives, afraid to show their face into towns and cities for fear of being killed or arrested by bounty hunters? This plot hole did not keep me from enjoying the story because, like I said, it's very, very engaging throughout. I love the characters, I love the themes, I love the tone. But once I noticed it, it kind of just throbbed like a sore wound, and I just couldn't stop looking at it, and it drove me crazy. And the second thing isn't necessarily a flaw in the story, but I did not root for Tristan and Willow to be together. Let me explain. I love Willow's character. I think she's warm and caring and resourceful, and I love that she loves her family so much. And I also really, really love Tristan's character. He is, again, very caring, very warm, very innocent and childlike. But I just did not see any chemistry between them at all. I did not see why they should be together. Their bond seemed to do more with them trying to survive together in a dark place, and they were each other's only source of light. But it really seemed like a bond of necessity more than a bond that would go beyond that. It didn't seem deep. And on the other hand, I thought that the scenes between Willow and Draven were really, really, really deep, and there was so much that was not being said. And he was a part of her roots and her village, which is what drove her as part of who her character was. So it made more sense that that bond would be so much stronger than this new pretty little toy that she had come into contact with. Another part of the reason I didn't especially love to see Tristan with Willow was because some of the narratives seemed to act as if Tristan was a complete victim in his relationship with Victoria, but he had chosen to marry her and be with her. And he chose not to speak out against her when she was doing violent, borderline murderous things. He would maybe say, "What? What are you doing? That's not nice." But then he went on with it, which either meant his character was really very weak or that his character was actually benefiting in more ways than he was willing to admit from Victoria's actions. Because, I mean, Victoria was protecting him and giving him what he wanted at the time. So maybe he was glad to let Victoria do his dirty work for him. And again, I'm not saying Tristan deserved any of the treatment he later got from Victoria, but at the same time, he was not a victim in that relationship. He could have said no and walked away at any point, but he didn't. So I didn't necessarily like the Victoria bad, Willow good. Now he should move on to the good girl because he has his crazy ex. His crazy ex was a part of something he at one point in time chose. And again, I loved Tristan's character. I loved Willow's character. Their scenes together were very sweet in that I was glad to see them get to know each other and become friends, but I did not root for them to be together romantically. So, and I warned you, spoilers. While I was not glad that Tristan's character died, because I did like his character, I was glad that it meant that Willow did not end up with him in the end. Don't kill me, Tristan fans. I loved how ambiguous and fascinating Victoria's character was. I loved that even though she was this pretty evil villain, you could still also see where she had originally came from, and that she was still a human being. She still liked to paint. She still, in some weird, bizarre way, cared about Tristan. I love it when villains are a little bit ambiguous because it reminds us that we all have that capacity for darkness, and the little choices that we make every day ultimately decide what road we're going to end up going down. I loved that the real villain ended up being Elias. I warned you there would be spoilers. Did you listen? No, you didn't. I remember in the sacrifice ceremony that I didn't really like him very much, and I was just like, well, why doesn't he go? I mean, he's the leader of the village. He seems like a nasty kind of fellow, but whatever, I guess that's just the way things are. And so I was glad that it circled back to him being kind of a nasty man who was afraid of power, or afraid of losing his power. I love the themes explored in this book. It really ultimately seems to boil down to the only thing to really fear is fear itself. Because Victoria brought on the darkness and tortured Tristan because she was afraid of change. She was afraid of dying. But Elias had only tried to burn her and Tristan alive because he was afraid of change too. He was afraid of what sorts of things they might bring to the village and what kind of knowledge that might threaten or question his power. And in contrast, Willow is the only one who's willing to endure the unknown. She steps out of the knownness of her village into this darkness where she has no idea what is going to happen to her. And that's how she brings light both physically and literally to her village and ultimately saves everybody. And of course, the thing I loved the very, very, very most about this book was Draven. I loved how quiet he was. I loved how serious he was, how giddy he was about his hawk. I just loved the innocent depth there was to the scenes between him and Willow. And I was super excited when I learned that K.M.Rice actually wrote a companion novel to this story that is all about Draven's story. What did you think of Darkling? Because you read it, right? You went and you read it before you finished watching this video. You wouldn't be here if you hadn't read it. I spoiled everything. Did you like Tristan better than Draven? I mean, everyone has the right to their own opinion, just some opinions are wrong. That's all I'm saying. Thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on Instagram, Taryn_Tyler_author. I want to thank my very first patron on Patreon, Kimberly. Your support means absolutely everything to me. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos about literature, books, writing, and general geekery. Bye. Because you read it. Blah, blah, blah. I love the musical. Blah, 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 blah.